I'm going to tell you right now, she's one of my favorite people that I have come across over the last year and a half and have begun following religiously. She's taken the stage with the likes of Grant Cardone, Les Brown, Darren Hardy, Lewis Howes, and more. And I'm really interested in the footnote of the "and more" because it's probably like, and Barack Obama and, the president of France and like all these sorts of things. I'm sitting down with the one and only Danelle Delgado, and I am so excited you're here because I have probably 18 zillion questions. Don't fact check me on that. That I'm like, oh man, it's happening. I'm pinching myself. Here we go. And I'm so excited to have you here today. So I want to kick it off with this question. Why do you care so much about any of this stuff?
Oh, probably my favorite question I've ever been asked. I've never been asked it. Oh my gosh. So automatically you just went to my number one podcast interview ever. You know what's interesting? Why do I care about all this? In the beginning, I think it's changed. In the beginning, I honestly struggled most of my life with wanting to matter. And I think most of my life I felt that I didn't. And when I became an adult, I decided that I wanted to. I tried mattering in relationships. I tried mattering as a mom. I tried mattering in the church. I tried mattering in sales. And everything I did was based on some kind of achievement. And I think, most people find their self confidence or self worth based on what they've done for another and what they did. And what you find out is your mattering has to do with what is truly true of you. And so I think I was just on a journey to impress myself. It sounds really
Sure.
selfish but I really found that my greatest worth in the world was knowing that I had gifts, discovering those, working so hard to develop those and using them to make a difference. I met so many people who were winning, and I realized that when people win, they make a difference. When they earn, they give back, and that there was no winning, mattering, or giving back if you're losing. So that's where it all started.
And okay, so right out of the gates, I'm like, oh man, I love this so much because, the DPB gang, they know that, um, and I talk a lot about this. It's so crazy. I remember 10 years ago, I was, closer to 15 now, but I was right smack in the middle of almost a decade long struggle with severe depression, suicidal depression, this sort of a thing. And I remember coming out of it and some of the principles that helped me come out of it, because a lot of it was comparing myself to others. I'm never going to stack up. I will never be, this is kind of funny. I will never be Grant Cardone.
Mm.
The reality of it is, no, you will never be Grant Cardone because Grant Cardone's Grant Cardone and you're Michael Cirillo. Like, and I remember writing down a whole list of things, and I still have this little brown book that I got at like a Dollar Tree, and I wrote down. It was just, I think it was an exercise to break me free of talking myself out of things I wanted, whether how big or small they were. So there were things in there like own a MacBook, you know,
Right?
get to know or meet Grant Cardone, meet
Yep.
whoever it is, Ryan Dice, meet Danelle Delgado. Like it was all these sorts of things that were so impossible.
Mhm.
And I went through this phase of like, this feeling like what you're saying of I don't matter or what I do doesn't matter or it's never good enough. Or why do I always get the team that gets called last? Why am I always on that team? Like that sort of a thing.
Right.
And it's weird. It's not weird. It's humbling. It's exciting. I call it the sweet spot, this ball of hope that resides right in here where you're like, man, things are happening. For me to look back at that book, everything, it was like travel the world, go to Australia.
Mhm.
I am in France. I am in like all these things that
Had
seem
that
so
same book.
impossible.
Yeah.
Today, I am living
Yeah.
the reality of all of those things that once seemed impossible.
Right.
And so when I hear you say what you're saying, I'm like, this seriously, DPB gang, this is legit. This is the truth. And I also love, I wrote down the word freedom
Mm.
because I don't think and I know you coach so many people in your amazing coaching programs and your amazing mentoring programs. And I'm sure some of them are like, I just want freedom.
Right.
But they're trying to stack up to some other
Right.
someone else's definition. And that's really what I just stood out to me from what you said is,
Right.
why am I trying to stack up to somebody else's definition of, they don't know what I want?
Right. I mean, honestly, Michael, that's exactly it. I remember writing down freedom. It was like my password forever, like on my stuff.
Your
And
Hotmail
and
password.
it was like freedom 2011, freedom 2012. Holy crap,
Right.
freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alive 2014, right? Like it kind of like dwindled me because I really didn't know what freedom was, but I think that freedom came in that transition of why do I care so much became matter. And then when I did matter, it became about who I could help because I mattered to me. Like, I and that's kind of what has stood out this year. This is my 10th year in business. Actually, I just finished my 10th year. So it's 10 years as an entrepreneur that started with a dream and moved to, it's interesting. I'll just tell you the story because I know you care so much about helping people live happy, meaningful lives while having a career. I
Yeah.
think I just meant like, forget happy, go to the meaningful career. And then I came back to live happy, live
Right.
meaningful. Um, but I ended the year serving the homeless. And I spent 4 days. I took the last 3 weeks of December off. I've never done that in my life. It was so clear, so meaningful, and I wanted to. And I spent the year serving, working 10-hour days on my feet. And I was like, "Good Lord, I'm thankful to be an entrepreneur." Two, I looked at it, and it was so meaningful. Going 10 years ago, I was the homeless who needed this help.
Wow.
To what you can actually do when you make life about like learning your potential, exercising it, committing to the things that will make you grow into it. Where so many people that I know from then are still in the same place they were 10 years ago. It's just this absolute thing of I mattered. And then I helped other people know that they mattered. And then it became about I could talk to people and look at them who have these potentials, that hope you talk about that wrestled in your belly. Okay,
Yeah.
we all have that hope when we see somebody doing that. We see Grant Cardone having an event, you're like, I'm gonna do that. You see someone speaking on stage or doing it, you're like, I'm gonna do that. And you're exercising, right? I always wanted to go to Australia, started in a company there. But if that's wrestling in your belly, what I challenge you to think now before it's done is, okay, so when you do that, what happens, right? And if you could only, I said this the other night in one of my trainings and it got shared out all over the place online. And I feel like I finally hit the nail on the head. If you only knew who you'd help by living that fire in the belly, you would never, ever doubt it, and you would operate as the true freaking miracle that you are. Like all those skills, all those gifts, all those things that went wrong happened so that things could go right. Like if you just knew the eyeballs and the faces of who you'd help, you would be like, bring on the pain, the struggle, the challenges, I'll give it a hug and say thank you when it's here. Because I look at the faces now that I almost quit on, and it went from mattering to responsibility, And I think that's
Yeah.
why I care so much. Yeah.
And it's so true. I think you've just explained it more eloquently than I've ever been able to figure out in my own brain, because I've been asked that question. Why do you do this? Why do you care so much? And the best I've ever been able to come up with is, it sounds cheesy to the wrong audience.
Right.
And Lord knows I've tried to eradicate it from myself and whittle, I'm the guy in the corner laying down in fetal position that just wants, a bag of Cheetos next to me. And,
I love a good Cheeto.
hey, who doesn't? Yeah. Who doesn't? But what you just said is really, I feel like I am honored and added upon when I see the twinkle in somebody else's eye, and it brings me such joy that I can't, it's funny being in the auto industry, and there's a lot of new little auto industry podcasts popping up. And it's funny, the mentality about the auto industry for so long. They're like, hey, we've been listening to you for so long, but we thought we would start a podcast. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, How can I help?
That's why you're winning right there.
We need your voice. I don't know why I'm Seinfeld all of a sudden. I don't understand. Of course we need you. Um,
Right, please. I can't get all 8 billion by myself. Would sure appreciate the help.
yeah, let's do this. Giddy up. And so
Yes.
I love that because you know that for those that know who you are, know this already. For those that don't, that are listening, and maybe this is your first exposure to lovely Danelle, that somehow permeates the ether, your desire. And I think that's what makes people want to cling to your message and to what you're doing. And so I really love and I appreciate that about you. But it's
Thank
also the truth. It's also how I believe in God. Some people believe universe, whatever the word is that we believe in. That's a fundamental truth of how the universe works, right?
Yes. Yeah. A ball of gas didn't make me amazing, but each to their own.
Right. Each to their own. But whatever you believe, we
Yeah.
know that good thing, whatever we've defined as good, clings to good.
Yep. Yep.
You know, people that woke up this morning, they're listening to this, they're driving to work, they're driving home from work, and they're like, it's going to be one of those days.
Oh,
And guess what?
yes,
It
it
ends up
will
being
be.
one of those days.
Yes, you are correct.
So
Right?
let me ask you this, because I know you are a mentor to so many in a variety of verticals. I know you work with some auto dealers. What's the biggest thing that you see where maybe they're actually getting too ahead of themselves?
Yeah. Oh, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So here's the thing, right? Everybody, auto, technology, anybody, what do they need? They need sales to make the world go round, correct? So if you
right.
need sales, what people think most of the time is, well, they immediately need sales training, right? If I need sales, I got to get my people trained. And I say before sales training comes the development of people, because I became an incredible sales professional when I became a developed human. Now you can do those together, but you can't do one without the other. You cannot have an exceptional salesperson without someone who is developing into a great human, because eventually they get found out. So I think that's where most people are missing. That's why I've moved into a lot of auto stuff, a lot with Glenn Lundy, who developed himself so he could develop others. And people look at, well, why do people go so quickly, and then why do people go so slow? It's those who are willing to look at their weakest spots, call them out, and go, you're mine. I'm eating you for lunch, man. Let's
Yeah.
grow through this. Let's fix the emotional, irrational responses. Let's fix the pain and the anger and the false beliefs. And it sounds like fluff, but there's a reason they call me a hammer. I seem really kind, but I will be very direct. And it's because someone was that way to me, and it's what shocked my system into, oh, I may need a little of the fluff. Because I wasn't like ever a fluffy girl. Like I wasn't a crying when it's hard,
Right.
human. Most of my friends were male. Most of my mentors were male, because I was like, I don't care about fluff. You don't have to be nice to me. Please be honest. Please tell me what I need to do. And so I think people appreciate that truth. Some of them aren't ready for it. And if they're not ready for it, like, look at all these salespeople out there hustling, slinging stuff online, trying to get more deals. And I'll go, listen, develop you, and people will attract to you. As they saw me transform before their eyes, at first they hated it, then they loved it, then they wanted to know how they could get some of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That's what I think they miss. I think they miss the importance of the hard work of developing people.
Is it just because do you think that's a fixed belief because we're now seeing second, third, fourth generation, and they saw how it was done, and maybe this is just the way we keep going?
And I think online exposed it, right? Didn't have online before, so they didn't know how it worked. Development used to be in the power of a handshake, and men stood for that. And then all of this stuff went away, and it was so easy to have trash online. It was so easy to then it became the slick Ricks who had scripts and those kinds of things that helped you. But when you develop a person, you take scripts and you blend it with who they are, and they become great leaders. And so I just think it's a true element. It's just like building a house. Okay, so if you take a house and you have a crappy foundation, You have a wood foundation versus a concrete one. You have sinking sand, right? It's why all of the engineering is so important in this day and technology. It's the same with the human. You got broken humans trying to build, and what happens is they throw sails on there and they throw this and they raise up really high, and then they're like, I've lost it all 3 times. And I'm like, that's because you never fixed the first part. And the first part is that foundational element of becoming the one who believes in themselves to a point that they're going to do right, they're going to do good, and they're going to do it well.
Yeah.
That's, that's.
And you had mentioned this is something you can do all together. I think our human nature is that we're so absolute. Like everything is so absolute. Oh, I got a tickle in my throat. I've got the flu. And it's like, or like you need to brush your teeth or, but we're so absolute. And to your point, like people go, I either have to work on the one thing or the other, but you just mentioned, no, these are things that you can work on together. So how do you help somebody reconcile, but how do I work on these things together? I need the money. The money must come in or the business is we're hooped.
You got to get it to be their idea. That's it. So it moves from telling people what to do to asking them the right questions. So I could tell you, listen, you could do them both together. Look, I'm an example. That's kind of the old school way. Because look, if Danelle can do it, I can do it. Or I can say, well, would you rather fix your foundation and make money at the same time, or make money and lose it all later? Which sounds better to you? I could teach you both ways.
Right.
And so they're like, oh, well, I want to do this. So if they say I want to do that, then I remind them all the time, you said you wanted to do that, right? Because I can teach you how to sell and will and deal and sell ice to an Eskimo, as they say. Someone is skilled. That's not skilled, by the way. That's like ridiculous. Why would I sell them something they don't need? Anyway, unless it were flavored. If it were flavored, I'd be happy to sell it to them because it would be an upgrade. But, like what I'm saying, if people put all these dumb things out there and they say what people have always said, just like this. Well, you can't have it all. I'm like, who made you believe that? That's so sad to me. I have it all. I have a career. I have a family. I don't need anyone to do anything for me. Like I get to choose when I get to have that, and I grow and those kinds of things. So to me, it's better to do together because not only are you building yourself, you're forcing yourself to rewrite things. For instance, take a salesperson. They have been working on a sale for a long time. The guy comes in, finds this auto that he wants. He's like, oh, I'm so close. It's going to be the biggest sale of my life. And then he goes to the dealership across the street and buys it. He's like, oh, they gave me a couple dollars off of yours. And the person, the human, is like devastated.
Yeah.
Devastated because they have no foundational thing. They're like, you're right. I wasn't meant for this industry. And they go through all these things in their head that talk them down. Or you have someone who's being mentored strategically and they go, okay, great. I want you to go over and talk to that other dealer. And I want you to find out what makes them tick and how they do this. I want you to build a relationship over there so you never do that to each other again. I want you, and you're like working through the pain with them so they understand that pain leads to progress rather than pain leads to quitting. So if you're teaching both at the same time, you can build a foundation from failures. If you're not teaching both at the same time, you're reinforcing those failures that were like possibly floating around in their head that they could suck.
And what I love about this too is it connects I think a dot that's been missing for so long. In the business world, we love sports analogies. And we love athletic analogies. And we're like, yeah, the pain, and you can't grow muscle until you're feeling the pain and this and that. But I don't think that the dot that we miss is the dot of, and it's going to suck in your business. It's not going to be like, you don't get to just show that ending clip from the movie Rudy.
Right.
Right.
Can
you tell we've all been in sales?
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah, we can go back and watch that and cry for hours.
Yeah. Exactly. But and we watch those clips, but we never mentally take the time to have that register on how does that actually look in my business. And that's what I love about what you just said is there's a dot here you've been missing. Yeah. And you've got to work through that pain and it's okay. You're going to experience pain. And there's going to be nights when you're going to go home from work and want to scream into your pillow. That's normal.
Yep. And the only way, so like, if you take a look at thoughts, I'll try not to get too boring. People don't know how much I study the brain and science. I went to nursing school first. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Okay. Dig deep. No, we don't get bored at the DPV.
Okay.
Gang.
If you like this. Like, listen, every thought that comes in your head, every salesperson, this is what happens. Thought comes in, goes directly to the brain, goes to the feeling mechanism. Then you have to force it to the facting one, okay? To the actual, rational brain. What you have to do, and what personal development does, what reading consistently, what having great habits every single day. It's why morning routine books and habits catch on fire, because they seem right to people. Well, yes, you're training your brain. Most people don't train it, so it goes off of whatever the last failure or the last thought was. They're still feeling it. They're still rolling around in the muck of I suck. So if you can train those thoughts to come in and be felt real quick and facted, then you build your life off the facts instead of the feelings. So if I can take a human and help them grow to the point that I go, okay, great, and help them through a challenge and help them go straight to the facts of the situation. Here's what I learned. Here's what I did. They start attaching their life to the facts as opposed to the feelings. People only lose when they feel their way. So, and we're emotional beings. That's where all of our thoughts go first. So if you're building the foundational human, they have more facts, more feelings. And if you can take someone from here to a win once, to a massive win, if I say, hey, we're going to push through this and I'm going to help you win, and they're going to win so big, it automatically replaces all of the losses they have in their life. And every new thought comes based on that win as opposed to all the losses. So all you have to do is help them win for 90 days or so, develop them over a year, that becomes their pattern. And they don't go backwards. They don't. It's proven fact.
I wish you didn't have a flight to catch, because I want to just keep going.
Hey.
I love this, because anything to do with the brain, I love this, because I think until you start understanding and internalizing this sort of information, you're never going to understand what's happening to you.
Right.
I come from an Italian Portuguese background. Things linger in the feeling phase for way longer than they need. And then people end up dying in their resentments, and they end up dying in these alternate realities where stupidity is okay.
So do
and
most
so,
people.
What's that?
So do most people. They die in their resentments. They die in their feelings.
Oh, it's awful. It's no way to live life. And thinking about where people are at and how do we go to the next level, a lot of what you're saying is not how stuff, it's do stuff.
All do.
Like,
right?
We're not philosophers.
People are looking for the checklist. I'm like, well, I was too busy doing to write one.
But do you think that's because they see you made a comment earlier about kind of social media and the internet is online is exposed, different sorts of things. And I always talk about social media, how it's the best part or it's where we go and post the best parts of our fake lives. Right? Like, I'm leaning up against a Lambo. That's not even, well, I don't do this, but there's people that lean it.
Instagrammers.
Yeah. I spoke to this youth group. I was at a youth conference, and I was talking to the youth about gratitude, their favorite topic.
Right. They're so grateful.
Yeah. And they go, I just want to be the Instagram person that got the shoe deal. I'm like, well, here's what you need to know about the shoe deal. They don't have a shoe deal.
Right.
Okay.
And they made $7.
They made $7 selling on eBay classifieds, and now they're like a shoe tycoon that you've never heard of, and so, but they see this, and I think a lot of people, even in the industry, they see this. People will message me all the time, and I'm sure they message you, and they go, "Your life looks so great. Your family is always laughing together, and I wish I had that." I don't know why that's the voice of it, but. But I'm like, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
I could be the biggest fraud on planet Earth, but why would I post that on social media? That seems like completely contrary to, like, the Wolf of Wall Street back in the day wouldn't even post if social exists. He wouldn't post that he was a fraud. He wouldn't show you the bad parts of his life. But I think people see Danelle Delgado and they're watching Friday Night Live, which, by the way, DPV gang, if you're not watching Friday Night Live, you need to watch this. You do it at the same time every Friday, right?
8 p.m. Mountain Time. 10
8 p.m. Mountain Time. My favorite time zone.
Yes, the only real time zone.
It's the only
Everything
way.
stems from mountain time.
It
Get it?
is. It is. You need to be watching this because every week Danelle is giving away so much knowledge. Okay. But you and I both know, DPB gang, that knowledge is only power when you know what to do with it. That's why we're talking about doing stuff, not philosophizing. Is that a word? Over the how.
It is.
It sounded fancy coming off, rolling
Right?
off my lip. Um,
Yeah, I think that's why social media is like, there's two ways to look at social media. One, it's where everybody posts their good stuff. Two, it's the world's right way of putting positive things in the world and teaching people to lean on that. I think the world before social media was so quick to lean on the loss, right? On the things
right.
we're losing on. It's just always going to be this way. And although a lot of people take it to the next level, kind of that younger generation, they think Insta famous is really important. I think there is so much room right now for real people to make real results online. The moment I stopped like performing and trying to do what everybody told me, and I started just showing up as me, like I remember the first time I was like humiliated. I burped on Friday Night Live and I was like, I'm just gonna hit end, accidentally turning the camera off, and I was like mortified because I was having Pellegrino or something, and it was like
Sure.
super bubbly, and I was like, well, that was an inopportune moment. Let's roll, folks. And like I just kept going, and it
Yeah.
kind of that humiliation, which I could see my family just like rolling in their grave, like I can't even believe, that they would let her on a stage that bodily functions were appropriate. It's kind
Yeah.
of my family. And I'm like, it's also this platform for us to knock all the fake stuff out of the water and
Yeah.
be the most unique growing thing. I think there is a thing to positivity. And so I won't ever slow somebody else's role by putting something negative out there. But
Sure.
it's more powerful when they work with me and they go, Danelle, your life looks so amazing. You travel the globe and your kids and your la da 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 da. And I go, I had the hardest year of my life last year and nobody knew it. And I'm going to tell you this story and show you that what it looked like online and what I went through is how I fact my life instead of feel my life. And I create opportunity because I force myself to make a positive difference in the world, as opposed to sharing them my health challenges, my personal loss challenges, all of these things. And if we can force ourselves to realize that the difference is more important than the drama, that's a good line. I should mean that. The difference is more important than the drama. That's all that matters.
Yeah. I love that. I was having a conversation with somebody. They were traveling. They came out of the hotel and they basically watched this commercial truck back into their car and then rip the bumper off and it caused a whole kerfuffle. They were kind of trapped they were from Canada traveling to the States, so they're trapped in a different country for a while. And the conversation was, man, when is this kind of stuff going to stop happening to me? And my comment was, you got to hold on, pause, pause. I'm like, that's just stuff that happens in life. It's
Right,
not necessarily that it was happening to you.
right,
It's just that if it wasn't you, it might have been the car next to you, and that's somebody else. And how are you going to look at that? You're going to be like, well, sure glad that didn't happen to me. Um,
right.
and so for me, what you just said really made me think of that, because I'm like, guys, the sooner we can stop thinking that the universe or God or whatever you believe is acting out towards you because
More
they've got
so,
some vendetta against you,
yeah.
and that there's certain things that just happen in life. Health is a thing that happens.
Yep,
Uh, uh, Loss is a thing that happens.
yep,
The faster you can get away from, but why does it always happen to me? It's like, dude, no, this is just stuff that happens. You just
right.
so happen to be
The
the
cool thing
recipient of it right now.
the cool thing is that you were alive to feel it. Like, I mean, that's the difference. Like, what if that breaking their car was a way to keep them from getting on the road because they were going to get in an accident that killed all of them? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've lost my keys in the house, and like, literally, I could save the world with my brain. I can't ever find my coffee. So, like, I don't know. God couldn't give me all the gifts, just some of them. So it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the world. So, like, I can't tell you how many times I've lost my keys and driven, and I barely missed an accident. And I was like, thank you for making me lose my keys today, whether that was you or me. I appreciate it. Right.
Sure.
Like, my grandpa taught me a great gift. Like, my grandma and my grandpa, right? Grandpa was a realist. Grandma was an opportunist. Okay. Grandma's like, wake up. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. Like, go be great. And my grandpa was like, not everybody made it today. You better get after it. Like, get after it. It gets to be you today. And I really adopted that realist theory that every time my eyes open, I literally wake with one rhythm. You guys can change your life. All of you listening, with one rhythm. I wake up, figure out your statement that wakes you up in the morning, that makes you about the impact. And I go, I would literally wake up and I go, feet on the floor, who's the lucky one to run into me today? And I like force myself to make a difference. It means I care about myself. I care about that. Like, and I get up and I go, it gets to be me. And I think any who's a cancer survivor, who's a survivor of anything, you look at life differently. And most people are like, no, we can't believe you survived cancer so many times. We can't believe all this stuff and how hard. And I go, it changed the entire trajectory of my life. I am so grateful. Coming back to gratitude, which is the key to living a great life in every capacity. That's what it is. I go, it gets to be me today. I am strong enough to save a life. I'm strong enough to mentally change someone forever. I'm strong enough to help them make $1 million. I'm strong enough to help them sell a car. Like, it doesn't matter what the task is, it's that it gets to be me. Great. Somebody wrecked my car. I had an employee out here that I was testing out. She wrecked my car while she was here. I let her take it. I was like, it happens, whatever. And she was so freaking nervous. Can you imagine if you crashed Danelle Delgado's car? And I was like, girl, it's no big deal. Are you good? Are you okay? She's like, but your insurance and I go, that's why I have all that stuff. Didn't matter if I had money or not. That would have been my same thought process of, you are great. They are great. It gets to be me. Maybe I needed a new one. I didn't like white,
Yeah. Yeah. And then what we see on Facebook the next day is when you posted a picture of you in your new car.
Right. Exactly. It was my
They
other
only saw you.
my dog.
Man, it must be nice to have Danelle's money. She just goes and buys a new car. They don't see I was testing somebody out.
It's a perfect example, Michael. I sat there to post that picture for about an hour and didn't post it. And I was having a conversation with one of my friends and I go, man, I'd love to show people. I'm so excited that 10 years later, I can really pick and do, and I want to encourage them. And then I was like, but there's those people who it will be nasty and they won't like those things. And I literally thought about, oh, it's fine. Nobody needs to know what kind of car I drive or whatever. And then I was like, you know what? I got to do it for the dreamers who have that. Put it up on your vision board. It was amazing to me from a couple years ago where you have all the hate to, it was probably one of my highest liked posts in a very long time. And I go, you can shift people's minds to abundance. And they were like, you deserve it. You're amazing. If I compared it to like 3 years ago when I got a new car and people were like, you're such a bleh, how dare you
look at this entrepreneur.
Yeah. And it's a similar audience. I had people send me private messages and go, listen, I didn't always believe you. I'm pretty proud of where you went. Like, way to go, girl. And so it's greater to like change people's perspective than hear it. Man, I'm never afraid of feedback. People don't like the hate on there. But I was like, man, feedback is the breakfast of champions. I listen to it all. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. But if you're afraid of hate, you really don't care about making a difference.
I feel like just hearing all these examples with the premise of here's how your brain works is so like I feel so enlightened and enriched and empowered hearing you connect the dots for me in that way. And I know the DPB gang is going to feel that too. The fact that if I am more aware of how I process thought and how I process different things, the world really does become my oyster.
100%. That's what they meant by that statement.
And so many people are in whatever. I heard a statistic. I happen to be one of those. You know how we always say nobody listens to morning radio talk show, yet I still find myself listening to the local morning radio talk show here in Edmonton, Alberta, the frozen tundra. And they were talking about how 68% of the data set that they pulled from, 68% were bored at work. And I immediately felt nauseous
Yeah.
because I thought, how could I do this? Yet, a lot of the questions that I get through the DPB Facebook page, through my personal page, emails, all have to do with some measure of feeling unfulfilled, unsatisfied, that they're not growing at work, and they've almost placed everything about their life, well, kind of going full circle to where you started about mattering. They've
Yeah.
almost made it like if I don't matter at work, then I don't matter anywhere.
So that's where they spend the majority of their time, right? The number one human need of all humans, significance. If you
Huh.
can fill that void, even if it's through service, they'll love the job that they hated. They'll love the family that's been a challenge. Like if you could take every human and help them know that they are significant, you'll eradicate depression, you'll eradicate um, suicide. Like all of those things that come from that is just a human who was misinformed for so long they believed it.
I believe wholeheartedly in that. I can attest that that's the truth. I, working in a family business, I used to hate what I did.
Mhm.
Oh, it was the worst. And yet somehow I've grown into absolutely loving everything about, in my brain, I've made it
Yeah.
because I love so much. And it's in large part with what you just said. Actually, it's
Mhm.
totally in part of it has everything to do with what you just said. How can I go from hating something to absolutely loving it? Well, there were so many things along the way. I'm not going to line item everything that
Right.
changed for me, but it really has to do with what you just said. And so I know there are hundreds of thousands of sales professionals in our industry, finance officers, service department employees that are going like, this is just a job. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. And what if you made it the most fun ever and you changed a group of depressed people into having fun, but you taught them how to love their life after work? Like, believe me, every part of building this was not glorious and amazing. I have gotten less sleep in 10 years than most humans ever. I've done what people do in 30 years in 10, or 50
Yeah.
or 60 years. I have, like like the ugly is, but I didn't allow it to be ugly. I have a way of gamifying life in a way that I will not do it unless it's fun. My best ideas have come out to play, not to work. And everything is perspective. It's how you look at it. And I think it's a pattern change that has to happen through gratitude. There's one thing you do from listening to this podcast. You write down 10 things you're grateful for every single day. You let no negativity in there, like I'm grateful for so and so being a jerk because I'm better. No, that's not gratitude. That is manipulation of the mind. So you have to forcefully practice gratitude 10 things a day, every single day. I will stake my life on it. I don't let people work with me unless they've done it for 90 days because I don't want to deal with that negativity. Like,
Hmm.
but you will transform how you see things. Like the more important you get, the bigger the problems. I was on with my mastermind from Necker Island, the Branson mastermind. And I was on with my mastermind this morning and we were like, man, don't we love that every year we get bigger problems to discuss? These problems are killer. Like, how cool we get to conquer these, right?
Yeah.
I look at 6 years ago, 4 years ago, I was posting Richard Branson quotes going like, greatest human philanthropist in the world and creator and business and entrepreneur. To I get to work with them, be around them, help their biggest causes. I'm raising $1 million for charity this year for their movements. Like, I don't know how that happened. You cannot explain it other than I took the hardest life ever and I turned it into, this is the opportunity of a lifetime to overcome. And it's all perspective, and my perspective only changed 100% by doing, gratitude, and proving to myself every day, one little win, next right step, next right step, next right step. I can't explain how it all happened other than my perspective. I forced the change. I
I
wasn't
love
raised
it.
that way.
So awesome. I love it so much. I have one more question for you, but it is reserved for those that are exclusive members of the DPB Pro community. If you want to join that community, fill out the application on Facebook by visiting my Facebook page, The Dealer Playbook. Click that little join group thing, and you're going to be asked some questions. You can only be in there if you participate. So if you're not willing to participate, you can't be in the group. That's just one of the basic rules of this group. But we ask questions from our guests that don't get aired here on the full version of the podcast that is reserved only for those in the group. And that's the last question I have. But before we do that, we're going to close down the public facing version of the Dealer Playbook podcast. Danelle, I love you. And I am so grateful for you because you enrich and empower my life and you get me thinking bigger and you've shifted my perspective so many times. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast. How can those listening get in touch and more familiar and more involved with what you do?
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for
It
what
happened.
you're doing in this world. That's why I'm here. That's why I said yes. Man, I only attach my name to people who are doing something I love and something that I would be happy to be a part of. So thank you for
Thank
what
you.
you're doing in the world, being great. Yeah, find me on Facebook, Instagram, social media is the place for me, Danelle Delgado.com, Facebook, Danelle Delgado. Don't misspell it with an I. That would just be rude. And I love it. I look forward to helping you being great in any way I can.
Thank you so much.